Hey, remember when we were trying to figure out whether that 7-foot pool table we saw online was really worth the space in the basement? I was in the same spot a few weeks ago scrolling through endless options, worrying I'd either end up with a cheap piece that sags after a couple of games or splurge on something that sits half empty because it looks too pro for casual play. If you're feeling that same hesitation, the link is in the description if you want to check the product details on Amazon. I spent the past weekend actually setting up the Draco 7-foot tournament table in my game room, because I wanted to see if the hype about its professional play claim held up when you're just trying to shoot a few rack-ups with friends after work. The first thing I noticed was the non-slip design on the legs and the base. It's not the kind of thing you read on a spec sheet, but it matters when you have kids running around or a pet that likes to jump on the table. The rubberized feet grip the floor and keep the whole thing from wobbling, even when you're putting a lot of weight on the cushions during a break shot. That steadiness translated directly into more consistent rolls, which is a subtle but real advantage if you're trying to improve your game. The table comes with a set of accessories that are actually useful out of the box: 4 balls, a cue rack, a triangle, and a chalk holder. Most entry-level tables ship with a single cue ball or a flimsy rack that you have to replace anyway. Having those basics included means you can go from unboxing to playing in under 10 minutes. The easy setup claim isn't an exaggeration. The instructions are straightforward, and the bolts line up in a way that feels intuitive rather than a puzzle. I didn't need a second pair of hands, which is a nice relief if you're moving the table into a tight hallway by yourself. Now, let's talk about the playing surface. The blue felt is a bit brighter than the traditional green, which gives the room a pop of color and makes the balls easier to track for the eye, especially under dim lighting. I've had a few sessions where the room lights were low and the blue actually helped reduce eye strain compared to a darker cloth. The felt feels fairly smooth, and after a few rounds the ball speed feels comparable to what you'd get on a commercial venue. That realistic play feel is important because you don't want to practice on a surface that behaves completely differently from the one you'll encounter at a league night. Who should consider this table? If you're a serious hobbyist who already knows the basics of cue sports and wants a piece that can handle regular practice without feeling like a novelty, the Draco hits a sweet spot. It's large enough to let you run through advanced patterns, yet compact enough for a standard basement or a dedicated game room where a full-size 8-foot might be a stretch. The price point sits between budget-friendly models that often compromise on surface quality and high-end tournament tables that demand a dedicated space and a higher budget. For a family that enjoys occasional games, a few competitive evenings, or even a small home league, the table offers the kind of pro-ish experience without turning your garage into a bar. On the flip side, if you're just looking for a casual tabletop that you can fold up and store after a weekend get-together, the Draco isn't the best fit. It's a permanent fixture, and while the legs are non-slip, the whole unit weighs enough that moving it takes more than a couple of friends. Also, if you're a complete beginner who's never held a cue, you might find the 8-ball size a little intimidating. A smaller, more compact table could be a gentler entry point. Finally, if you're after a vintage aesthetic with classic green cloth and ornate wood trim, the modern blue and black design might feel out of place in your core. One practical weakness I ran into was the cushion response on the side rails. After a few months of regular use, the cushions have started to lose a tiny bit of their pop. It's not a deal breaker, but it's something to keep in mind if you plan on hitting high-speed bank shots frequently. The good news is that the cushions are replaceable, and because the table is designed with a straightforward rail system, swapping them out isn't a major hassle, just a bit of an extra cost down the road. Another consideration is the room's lighting. The blue felt looks great under standard ceiling lights, but if you have very bright ambient light or direct sunlight, you may notice a slight glare that can affect ball visibility. Adding a dimmable overhead fixture or a soft-edge lamp solves this, but it's an extra detail you might not think about until you start playing in the evenings. Overall, the value in the Draco comes from the combination of a sturdy, non-slip platform, a ready-to-play accessory,